Hello everyone, Pojo here. Welcome back to Eternal Brews. I am currently hunting for apartments right now, so if the YouTube schedule is going to be a little bit light this month, but I have a new basics in the pipe, and we also have this new brew that we're going to be talking about. So this is based off of a Mono Justice flyer list that I saw on the Reddit that I really liked. It also has a lot of similarity to some of our Huru flyers lists, but it is of course Mono Justice. And we're going to be playing around with Valkyrie in particular, and trying to fiddle around with sort of a mid-range to aggro archetype that is very, very aggressive with flyers and tries to use lifesteal flyers to steal away a game from our opponent by essentially in the same way as Huru flyers, forcing as little interactivity as possible. So the basic idea behind how this deck works is that we play ourselves a big pile of flying units. Pretty much every unit in the deck has flying, and there are 30 units. So we have Tinker Overseer, Eager Owlet, which cares about other units with flying. We have Unseen Commando, which gives units with extra battle skills +1/+1, and also is just like a really, really solid flyer. This card might be the strongest card in the Dusk Road. It just happens to be like an extremely powerful Rakano outlet. It's a really good Huru card. It does pretty well in any sort of Argenport lists. I haven't seen it that much in Cambrai, but if you're going to do like a Cambrai flyer archetype, then you can certainly do that. And Mono Justice, totally fine there as well. So it just fits in all the different archetypes very well because it's just such a solid unit on its own. It's got a pretty good body. It attacks to be immune to Torch, which is pretty useful. And also just a 3/4 is still kind of under the line for Island's favor, or Island's, not Island's favor, Island's choice. So yeah, just this card really, really kind of adds a lot of juice to your attacks and makes it very hard for aggro decks to push through on you. And if you stack them up enough, then they get to be truly disgusting without ever being big enough to actually be threatened by cards like Vanquish or Island's Choice. So yeah, well, you can actually get Island's Choice if you have multiple Unseen Commandos, but all the same, there's a lot of flexibility of play to this card, and it tends to be just a star of the deck, even though it is not, in fact, a Valkyrie. We do have Valkyrie Spireguards, which care specifically about other Valkyries. We don't have that many other Valkyries. I'm actually being fairly light on them, but we are running a decent amount, at least 12, and those in particular are, of course, Valkyrie Enforcer, the strongest of the Valks, the Amilli Cloudmarshal, the 5-cost engine that whenever it attacks plays extra Valkyrie that get bigger and bigger every time. This card is sort of the top end of the deck, and it's really quite good all on its own. You can certainly play more of these. I've currently only got 2, and like the deck that I saw that was running this was actually running 4 of these, along with 4 of the 5-cost 4/4 Warcry, which I wasn't particularly fond of that card, but I think Amilli is an all-star in this deck. Okay. So yeah, that card's really, really good. And then finally we have Valkyrie Justiciar, which is a card that I've been running in Huru Flyers and actually being pretty happy with. And it's also a card that I will run in this Mono Justice deck. A 4 might be a few too many, but at the moment I'm having pretty good results with it because we're facing off against a lot of armory decks and a lot of sort of pretty expensive decks. And Valkyrie Justiciar is the card that you play on the turn when you don't want your stuff to get harsh ruled. And since Harsh Rule is like sort of the name of the game right now, finding ways to slip under Harsh Rule is really, really strong, and Valkyrie Justiciar can do that just fine. So this card basically just picks a card with 4 or more out of the enemy hand, and then they can't play cards with that name. And if you play this late in the game, that typically just locks your opponent out of 1 to 2 cards that they might really, really want in their top decks. That's actually very, very strong on its own. And then also, this is a card that tends to do very well for buffing other Valkyrie, being a very, very tiny flyer all on its own, and just being kind of a pain in the butt. This is actually really quite strong. It essentially reads discard a card for as long as your opponent is unable to kill Justiciar, and it means that they have to kill Justiciar to play the card that they want to play, which means that you're always going to get Justiciar to eat a Slay or an Annihilate or one of those removal spells that would otherwise be aimed at a big 3/3 or a 2/2. So this card is just always going to basically draw enough removal to justify its play, and I find it to be very, very effective, even though it is not a very aggressive card. Now, because we're running a pile of Valkyrie, I get to run Rolant's Intervention, which is the other card that I saw in the list that I really, really wanted to add. This is probably... Oh man, this is one of the stronger charms of the set of sub-5. All of the intervention cards give you choices, but the fast spell choices are definitely going to be the most interesting. Roland's Intervention offers 2 different forms of card advantage, or rather card for card trading, where you can either give an enemy unit -3, which can often lead to a very, very favorable trade where you essentially just trade your intervention for an opponent's card, or you can use it to save your life at a key interval or do some other things where it's just like, this is pretty flexible and it does good things. You can give a unit or weapon in your hand +1/+1, which I haven't really been experimenting with too much, but could be useful for buffing up Silverwing familiars against particular archetypes. I think for the most part you don't want to do that very often, but there are certainly ways in which you can secure a lethal in ways that you would not otherwise be able to do, so might be worth looking at. And finally, you can give one of your Valkyries Aegis, making Rolant's intervention the equivalent of a protect for all of your 12 Valkyries. Now, Valkyrie, Justiciar, Enforcer, and of course Amilli are all cards that you absolutely want to be protecting, as well as Valkyrie Spireguard. So being able to run 8 protects in this deck, along with 2 or 3 Finest Hours, is really, really powerful for making sure that your Valkyries stay on the board and continue to pressure your opponent in a way that is very, very bad for them. Beyond that, we run a pile of Emerald Monuments, a pile of Emerald Waystones. I'm not doing much on turn 2, so I'm pretty happy with the Monuments. You can actually run 2 to 4 of these. I usually like to run 2. I'm currently running 4, and I think I'm actually going to adjust that down to 3 because I do like just playing consistent power every turn. On Monument is a card that definitely adds a lot of value to your Silverwing familiars and your Unseen Commandos, and it can protect some other big units as well. You have to be careful when you play these cards because they do open you up to Vanquish against many control decks, but that's kind of the thing that we're okay with doing for the most part. So yeah, this is really, really fun stuff. We're going to play a couple of rounds with it and show you how it works. It's really pretty simple, and if you've seen the Huru Flyers list from our previous Eternal Brews, then you'll be able to get into it pretty easy. There's a lot of variations to this. Like I said, you can go higher on the mid-range with Amilli's and the 5-cost 4/4. There's also some even bigger Valkyrie that you can go into, or you can go lower, try to spam the board with the 1/1 Valkyries. The list I saw was running Stalwart Silverwing, which I don't particularly appreciate, but I think that if you're trying to get really heavy on Valkyries so that you can get Spireguard out, that's an interesting way to do it, and not too bad. It's a very solid choice if you want to do that. And of course you can splash into other colors. Huru Flyers are quite good and Argenbort Flyers are quite good. So there's definitely different ways that you can experiment with this, and we're just gonna show off a couple of games and see where you want to go with it. All right, so see you in a few, folks. See you in a few, folks. All right, games now. Yes. I've been really appreciating monocolored decks lately. We made a monocolor fire deck for Eternal Basics, which is going to be commons and uncommons only, so that people can craft it really easily. And I've been playing around with that Shadow monocolor deck quite a bit on the Climb Up the Ladder. And it wasn't really working that well in a sort of more controlling archetype, just because of, like, basically, once the Stonescar decks disappeared, it was no longer as profitable to have 4 Shadowlands Tyrants in our decks. So as a result, I felt that if I was going to be continuing the climb and getting ourselves up to master, we'd go ahead and go with the Eager Owlets and go with a sort of more straightforward mid-range deck that's going to be a little better against the control archetypes. So Eager Owlet here looks very, very good. And beyond that, we have Valkyrie Enforcer and Silverwing Familiar. Go ahead and plug in my quieter mouse here so that people don't hear me click madly, because that is a thing that I really, really like to do. Alright, Silverwing Familiar will protect the Eager Owlet. If I use Valkyrie Enforcer, that might get removed, and then I lose a lot of tempo. But the other thing is that if I use Silverwing Familiar... Yeah, I actually want my opponent to target the Eager Owlet, because Silverwing Familiar can carry things for me. Alright, no response at all, so my opponent's not doing anything on turns 1 through 3. That means that we'll definitely want to keep our protects up and have some way to defend ourselves against Harsh Rule. Because if your opponent does absolutely nothing, then generally you can expect a Harsh Rule on turn 5. I've seen a lot of decks that are doing that lately, and of course the green Shadow and, or the Justice, Shadow, and Time. Okay, we're going to see Vara's Choice for the face. Okay. Valkyrie's gone. Alas, I could have protected myself if I had had everything going right, but did not go right. Alright, this deck is very likely a Mokto deck, and we can get around that in a couple of different ways. For one, we can lock down Mokto with Valkyrie Justiciar, which is delightfully fun just because it denies the Destiny effect. But we can also do things like Valkyrie Enforce Mokto away, which I'm pretty fond of. We can Vanquish, of course. I think I'm going to go ahead and play... No, I'm going to wait on Valkyrie Enforcer here, because we could still get Vara's Choice, and I want to keep my Protects up. Stone Powder Alchemist will, of course, create a 2/2. That's going to be a problem. Rolant's Intervention will make that a little bit less of a problem, but in general, all I want to do here is silence things. And as long as we can silence all of his life gain cards, he's not going to get ahead of us. He doesn't get his revenges that way, and we have our Roland's Intervention here to keep the Valkyrie alive, so we're looking very, very good as far as attacks go. If he plays Mokto this turn, which he can't because his power is just a little bit awkward. Alright, so he didn't play Mokto. He's currently taking 6-7 a turn. If I play Mantle of Justice, then I'm not going to be able to Roland's Intervention, and I don't love that. I think what we'll probably end up doing is just attacking in for 7, and we'll let him get his 2 damage in. That's not a big deal. I have both a Roland's Intervention and a Protect, so a Harsh Rule will totally swing my way. Yep, that's fine. I could Roland's Intervention that to prevent him from gaining 2 life, but honestly, we're close enough to the victory that I think we'll be fine. And a Harsh Rule is actually death. Okay, so Roland's Intervention there. And then Protect there. That completely wipes his side of the board, and now I can just Mantle of Justice whatever I want and kill him off. So, very, very easy game, and we'll make our way up to Diamond 1. Good stuff. Alright, we're recording again. Have to remind myself of that. We're having kind of a silly day. I'm going to redraw here, and yeah, this should be very, very good. Eager Owlets and Unseen Commandos do a lot. The Valkyrie Justiciar feels fine. I think we'll go ahead and be ready to rock and roll here. Owlet into Owlet seems kind of nice if I can find a Protect, but if I can't find a Protect, then we might go straight for Unseen Commandos. Overall, I'm pretty happy with whatever at this point. We've got Valkyrie Justiciar, which is perfect for this kind of curve. Okay. And it's a Grasping at Shadows style deck, so what we really, really want to do here is get our Valkyrie Justiciar out on a turn where we have Roland's Intervention and just completely deny any type of Scream Grasping at Shadows action. My opponent didn't get anything here, so that's really, really good for us. Unseen Commando will get us some life gain, which might be really good, or I could go for another Eager Owlet and keep the Roland's Intervention out. I feel like Unseen Commando is fairly solid, and Eager Owlet might be more useful later. No, I actually want to Eager Owlet here because Unseen Commando on a turn where I can actually Aegis protect it is very, very strong. We don't have Roland's Intervention there, but we might find a Finest Hour or a Protect, and if that's the case, then that's what I want to do. Alright, this part gets really easy. Valkyrie Enforcer on a Direwood Beastcaller means no more Direwood Beastcaller, and that means that we can start swinging in for like 9 a turn, so we're in very good shape right now. My opponent can't Grasping at Shadows anything, he's got nothing to Scream, so all we have to do is weather a Rindra, which is certainly a card that has a sizable amount of lifesteal and is just generally quite scary. I think what we're going to do here is go ahead and throw a Valkyrie Justiciar and get Grasping at Shadows out of my opponent's hand. I've got 2 Roland's Interventions, I'm dealing 9 a turn. He's going to get his 5 back, but, I mean, who cares at this point? We have Roland's Intervention to protect our Valkyrie Justiciar, and while he gets just that 1 turn of night life gain, we should be otherwise totally fine. Alright, Gorgon Fanatic is a card that gains him a lot of life and draws him a lot of cards. Okay, so I have 9, 10, and I need 11. I think what we're going to do here is we're going to... I have to throw Roland's Intervention to get 11, but if he has an Annihilate, then that kind of sucks. Yeah, we'll just Roland's Intervention right now. Okay, and the reason that we did that was to give Aegis to our Valkyrie Justiciar. So now what we have is Unseen Commando and Attack, and we get a +1 bonus to the Valkyrie Justiciar because of Unseen Commando. So that's exactly 11. And there you go. If I had to weather the Gorgon Fanatic, I could have Roland's Interventioned it to get rid of the Scream, but overall we just had a really good matchup against that deck, so that worked out really, really well for us. We have another round, and it looks like Eager Owlet, Roland's Intervention, and Finest Hour. I'm going to redraw here. This is really not doing a lot for me. Okay, another Eager Owlet hand, and this time with no Protects. That's a little bit unfortunate. This deck is a little bit short on 2-drops. It's kind of hard to find a third really good flying 2-drop in Mono Justice. What a surprise, I guess? Not that big a deal. So Finest Hour or Vanquish could go out of this, and my opponent's playing Xenon. Xenon, I think, is one of the rougher matchups for the Flyers. It is pretty hard to get rid of Sandstorm Titans. The 3/3 Ion the Abductor is very, very good at sort of countering your aggro, and there's a lot of card draw and other cards that we really don't like dealing with all that much. We're generally okay with dealing with just 4 Sandstorm Titans, but the density of Xenon threats is really quite tricky on the ground, and it's not the traditional type of aggro where it's just like, oh, you have a lifesteal unit, we're going to lose, because their aggro often involves a lot of lifesteal, and that can be very, very bad for you. Alright, so here we're going to Unseen Commando or Valkyrie Enforcer. I have to decide which is better. Unseen Commando gives me the lifesteal, which I really do appreciate, but either one of these is probably going to get annihilated this turn, just on the way that my opponent is sort of holding. So we have to play one. Like, we have to actually be active. And the question is, am I going to be worried more about staying alive or being aggressive? And if it's staying alive, Unseen Commando definitely needs to be the card. Or Unseen Commando needs to be the card I save. We'll go ahead and go for Unseen Commando here. I believe that I want to be more aggressive here, just because my opponent could eventually, like, blow me out. But, okay, there was no Annihilate. That's pretty good. There's still going to be Banishes, so that's a card that I have to deal with probably immediately. But we'll see what happens. Okay, Extract. Yeah, and like Xenon definitely has like plenty of answers for early Flyers. They have Extract, they have Vara's Favor, which is not usually that big a deal, but does hurt Silverwing familiars quite a bit. And they have Banish, of course, which is really, really solid. In addition, of course, it's the Shadow deck, so it's got Annihilate, which is just nightmares for any sort of monocolored deck. Yeah, there's a lot that we definitely don't want to deal with. Let's not silence our Eager Owlet, because that would be very sad. And we'll play a Finest Tower. That should get us ahead of the next Extract, which would be really, really good. Alright, are you going to Extract me again, or are you down to Banishes now? Even Vara's Choice is just a little bit rough, so we'll see what happens. He could Sabotage me and get rid of my Finest Tower. There's a lot of ways that this could go poorly. We're going to do what we can. Alright. So Tinker Overseer provides another flyer. You generally want to play your flyers first when Eager Owlet is not on the board, just because if there's a removal spell, you want to actually get the tempo in.
Rule number 1, don't drop your tools.
So that gets us to attack for 6, but if the flyer is really valuable, like Amilli, there may be reason to hold back. Okay. Now Emerald Waystone just gets me armor. I was actually thinking it was a monument and that I needed to hold on to it, but extra armor is fine here. We don't have anything that actually capitalizes on that armor. Okay. So now you've got a 3/3, and I could potentially lose out on Finest Hour to Banish, but it's well worth actually doing here. Now we'll Finest Hour here to protect our Tinker Overseer and prevent a attack. My opponent's not likely to attack into Tinker Overseer this turn, unless he also wants to annihilate it.
Find solace in the darkness.
Alright, Lunar Magus offers a really sizable amount of extra health, which is kind of an issue. What we want to do this turn is Peacekeeper's Prod, because not only does that get that away from the Sabotage, but it also means that we don't have to deal with a Lifesteal unit for 2 more turns. So that's 1 less attack, and now we're actually looking really good in the air. He's not going to gain the 3 life. He does get the 4 life for Nightfall, which is certainly something that's going to be an issue, but I'm pushing enough flying damage that I should be okay at this point. Certainly this deck has plenty of answers, and if they line up very well, then the deck can really wreck you, but I'm actually not sure what Lunar Magus is doing in this deck. I'm guessing he's going for a different type of deck, some sort of Life Force style deck. And yeah, he can recover. If he extracts one of my units, then he's above 8, and then he can start looking at like Cruciates, a lot of other scary things. Blister Sting Wasp is a weaker play, but it does allow him to at least stop the 5/4. And I'm probably not going to hold back the 5/4 against a Blister Sting Wasp, because attacking for 6 is pretty strong. Alright, there's an Amilli, so yeah, we're going to just attack with everything. That should get the 5/4 dead, but we want him down as low as possible. Throw Amilli Cloudmarshal down, and that is definitely the mid-range beater that we're looking for. Can't be banished, can't be extracted, can be annihilated, but my opponent probably would have thrown Annihilate by now, so we're in very good shape for attacking with it, and the extra Valkyrie that it's going to generate will mean that even if he gets enough lifesteal, I think we've got him at this point. So what are we up to, Orpheus? Have you got the last bit that you need, or is that game? I really like Peacekeeper's Prod in this deck. Just being able to stun lifesteal units is extremely important. There's a lot of big units that have like good attack triggers, or like just are generally more difficult to deal with. There's 4, and then he can gain another 3, and that gets him to exactly lethal. So, looks like he's gonna call it, and what do you know, we pick up another game. That's 3 in a row. I'm gonna go ahead and do, I think we'll try to record one more, but that should be good. Alright, let's go ahead and play around against Hellbee here. Got 3 power and an Amilli right in hand. I have this Roland's Intervention, which makes me kind of like this hand a little better than I normally would. I don't have anything to play early, but I kind of like it anyways. There's no plan beyond just play Amilli, but we're getting close enough to it that I'm going to be pretty happy with that plan. Alright, Roland's Intervention could knock out some armor on these units. Overall, we definitely didn't play the anti-aggro play, so this is going to be a little bit difficult to set up. Alright. Another Ronin. I really need a 3-3 right now. Hey, Valkyrie Enforcer's perfect. We'll go ahead and silence a Warcry unit. If I can keep this unit alive against Torch or Finest Hour for one more turn, that'll be the crazy thing. Yeah, Whirling Duo actually is the only unit that can attack profitably here, so we just get to block the 2-1. And now I can play defensively with Roland's Intervention up and be a fairly happy camper, so I love it. Yeah, we'll keep the Finest Hours and Roland's Interventions out, and we're just going to knock everything down as much as possible. Block here. Roland's Intervention. So that's 0 damage back, and we've pretty much stymied the aggro at this point. Champion of Glory is a scary card, but we can probably live there. He hasn't really found any sort of torch ability, so let's go for Valkyrie Spireguard here. I'm not sure if his last card is Vanquish, and if it is, then it's kind of an issue, but I'd rather get the Spireguard out and then have Mantle of Justice next turn. So let's go ahead and just... Oh, let's block as though he's got Finest Hour. He doesn't appear to have Finest Hour, but I can now sit fairly tight and happy on everything that I've currently got going on. Okay, so Peacekeeper's Prod would go on the Valkyrie here if I want to stay put, which I do. I could take 2 and then be obliterated. I don't love that plan, so let's just go ahead and do this. And you do what you like. I've got your units on lockdown for the moment. Silverwing Familiar is a great add for me because I get Finest Hour and I start actually recovering again. And we're just going to continue to play defensively. This deck can turn on its opponent any time because I have the full 12 damage swing, which I think is just crazy good. Alright, so here we're going to Finest Hour this one. Block there. And then we're going to block the 3-3 and the 4-3. Oof. He didn't have any sort of tricks, so we just go straight back up to 7. And now his hand looks really, really bad. At this point, we put a Mantle of Justice on our 6-6, and I can swing with impunity if I choose to. I'll probably attack with Spireguard and the Silverwing Familiar, since that puts a lot of pressure on, but still allows me to Roland's Intervention, a Valkyrie Defender. So he can attack me for 6 here, but Roland's Intervention will stop Finest Hour, it'll stop Vanquish, and those are the 2 cards that I care about. Alright, and that'll do it. So really, really simple stuff. With the flyer decks, it's actually quite good sometimes to just sit back, but you really have to watch for the opportunities. If you know exactly what your opponent's going to play, if you know what's in their deck, and you think that you can actually keep a defensive line, then sometimes it's actually correct to do so until you find your lifesteal units and you can start attacking in. Because the deck often does represent 10 to 12 damage in the air, which is a 2-turn clock. That means that you can stay defensive and then just swing in when you absolutely need to. And recognizing that opportunity, I think, is one of the key elements to playing that deck at a master level. Alright, so yeah, that's it for today. I don't have anything further for the list. Actually, we'll go and we'll show off the list that was originally on the Reddit that inspired this list. So see you guys in just a second. Alright, this is Wings of Justice, deck by Subpar Glutes on the Reddit, and he was using 4 Amilli Cloudmarshals, which I did not have that many copies of, so I chose to go a little bit underneath it. Higher amounts of Mantle of Justice and Peacekeeper's Prods. I really like this deck. My suggestion is to modify the Peacekeeper's Prods up and the Mantle down a little bit, and get rid of the Stalwart Silverwings for the Rolant's Intervention to make it just a little bit more reliable on the Valkyrie that really matter. I don't find Stalwart Silverwing to be that strong of a card, but overall, like, a pretty strong deck, and certainly does play around Valkyrie, Spireguard, and Amilli really well. I like this deck a lot, and the person who was playing it was certainly doing okay with it. He climbed to like 700 in Masters with it, so if you are interested in that list, you can certainly run that too. Basically, I just encourage you to fiddle around with flyers, because there's a lot of really interesting archetypes there, and certainly plenty of different ways that you can push yourself up the ladder with it. So another good ladder climber deck, definitely fairly good for, I would say, middle of the month, because it's a little bit less Stone Scar, it's a little bit less, yeah, it just basically, that low interactivity really sort of happens to be very good in the later part of the month when people are playing a little bit less of the high aggressive decks, and just kind of the meta is balancing out a little bit. So yeah, that is it for me for tonight. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I will see you with more Eternal Brews and some Eternal Basics very soon. Cheers.